Wiley Vision Studio in Spokane, Washington. The Stephen James Wiley Show.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Steve Wiley Show. It's the coolest show in the world. For every boy and every girl loving Jesus or not. Whatever you're feeling. It's good. I sound like I have allergies, and I think I do. I don't care what they are, though. I'm not getting tested. You can't make me do it. But there is stuff flanging through the air in Spokane. About mid-tennis this morning, my sinuses just started burning with a yearning, if you know what I mean. Not really. And then a lot of running of the nose, and I took an antihistamine before I started the interview today with my guest, Mr. Dave Sposito, who's a super badass guy. I've known him for a little while because he is a part of the Dave and Molly show. He's the Dave, and my friend Molly Allen is the Molly. And they make a show. They combine forces to create a perfect circle of entertainment. The yin and yang of funny and wit. And honestly, they've been at it a long time. They had the Dave, Ken, and Molly show on 92.9 KZZU in Spokane, Washington, right here. And did that for 20 some odd years. And then abruptly, in June of last year, they were fired. And it was a shock heard through Spokane, Washington, and did not reflect well upon their employer. We talk a little bit about that, but mostly we talk about Dave's kind of life, his adventures in radio. The guy has been in radio for 40 years. So I was really excited about this because I know Dave. We've hung out. I've been on their show, which is awesome. And let me make sure I tell you where you can find it. That show is on Nonstop Local KHQ. KHQ is our local station here in Spokane. They are the affiliate of NBC. And Dave and Molly's show is actually found on their app, the Nonstop Local app. And it streams every morning like a morning radio show. And but essentially it's a podcast, but the vibe, the whole essence of what they do is still a very radio-esque thing. It is live. People can call in, and people download the app, and they listen to it just like they're listening on the radio. And, of course, the show is available after hours on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it, all the places, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, it's all there. So if you miss it in the morning, you can listen to it later that day. But they're on for 4 hours, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I had the great privilege of sitting in for Dave because he was out of town, and I got to be a guest host with Molly for a day, and that was a lot of fun. And it's just a cool show. So I won't keep plugging it, but it's awesome, and you should go listen to it. And they play my music on it. So today we have Dave, and we get to just take a deep dive into his life, get to hear his heart, the experiences he's had. And as usual, I love to get people talking and just ask questions and then sit and listen. So get ready to enjoy listening to the story of what's been going on with Dave Sposito over these last many, many years, and it's beautiful. There's some really fun stuff here. I'm excited, and I hope you enjoy it. We do have a vintage commercial for you today. I'm excited about this one. I used to watch this commercial because it was, we recorded the Dick Van Dyke Show and Perry Mason and stuff, and Disney movies, Sunday night Disney movies, on VHS cassette tapes. And when you did that, you ended up watching the same ads over and over and over. And there was an ad on our Dick Van Dykes because it was on KAYU, which became Fox. And they always had, afternoon television did not get the pricey ads. And they had an ad called Cigarette. So I found that ad on YouTube. It's funny. I cut it down because it's like 2 minutes long. It's brutal. It feels like a blend of a webinar and a revival meeting. But I had to cut a lot of it out because I don't want to make you listen to 2 minutes of it. But anyhow, today our sponsor is Cigarette. Do not call the 1-800 number at the end of the ad, or don't write in. And don't give anyone your credit card if you decide to call in, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to get you these Cigarette pills, which will help you stop smoking with their magic new formula. All right, here's our sponsor today, Cigarette, and then we are going to jump in with my guest, Dave Sposito.
It used to be fun to smoke. Not anymore. Now most of your friends have quit, and you would too, if you only knew how.
Now, arrest the smoking habit forever with Cigarette.
No matter how long you've been smoking, no matter how much you smoke, regardless of how many times you've tried and failed. Now available for the first time, these powerful pills contain a safe and effective formula that acts to arrest nicotine dependence without withdrawal. If you want to stop smoking, your next cigarette could be your last. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call us now.
With Cigarette, you're guaranteed to stop smoking in just 5 days without withdrawal, without gaining weight. Call toll-free to order 1-800-453-1900. Use your credit card and save COD fees, or you'd send $19.95 to Cigarette, P.O. Box 4444, Carlsbad, California, 92008.
And now, today's featured guest.
So, I was talking with Molly's boyfriend, Ken Witter.
Yeah.
And Ken was like telling me just a little backstory on you and how he knew you, right? And I wonder, because you have such a history in radio, I wondered if you would kind of give me, because I don't know exactly, the kind of your starting point. When did you know this was like a thing you wanted to do, and when was that?
It was probably in high school. Was probably when I thought, I'd be listening to nighttime radio, doing homework or just being home or whatever, and I thought, those guys are having fun, and this was nighttime shows. Morning shows didn't even resonate with me. I don't know what I was doing in the morning, but
right.
I wasn't listening to morning show radio. I was just, I listened for music, and then the nighttime guys, when they would be,
who were they?
My all-time favorite was Dancin' Danny Wright.
Okay.
He was at KMJK in Portland, and then he went all over. He was in Seattle and Cleveland and Detroit. I mean, he was kind of he was a big deal. But he was one of those guys. They're talking over records and they're hitting every post, and it just that's super cool. Yeah. But I love sports so much that my thought was I was going to go. I went to Spokane Falls, and they had a radio TV program there. And back then, they actually had a radio station and a TV station, that would be truly broadcasting out. So my whole thing was, I'm going to be a sports guy, play-by-play, calling games, or sports reporter, sportscaster, all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of my angle when I, started going through the program. I liked both. I liked radio and television. My internship was television at Creme Television. Mm-hmm. Well, back then it was Creme AM/FM TV. So, in the building they had a AM station, an FM station, and the TV station. So my internship is with Creme Television. And I would show up, I don't know what day it was, Thursdays or whatever day it was. And I'd always get there all fired up, all eager, walking in the building. Oh, this is super, super cool to be in here. And they would always say, well, shoot, we don't really have much for you today. So-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. why don't you, go down and see if they have anything in radio that they need you to do. And that happened probably 3 or 4 times. And that was sort of the genesis of, well, these people are having lots of fun. I loved the unscripted part of radio. The television, the thing that I was first, what I thought I was first attracted to was, I'm on television. Here's sports guys. I'm talking about sports, and here's a highlight. Here's this. Here's that. But that would all be scripted. You're planning and you're setting. Okay, I'm going to say this. This is when this clip is going to show, and you're, when you're young and you're all, it's like that in itself is pretty cool. It's like right when I say this, it's like the boom goes the dynamite guy. I think you've seen him. It's like he's waiting for his moment to like. So I remember like, processing that, and then the flip side to that, the radio side was, okay, you've got 45 seconds between these two recorded shows. You do the weather. You have this public service announcement, and then something about the station. But there was no reading of that. It was like you craft it the way you want. So that's how and then once I got into radio, then it was like, this is what I want to do. I loved it. I was all in. I mean, you're terrified, you're nervous and everything, but then it's also that thrill of that. And then started doing that and kind of worked my way up a little bit. And then
at Creme,
it was and I was doing Ken, Molly's Ken, did the same thing when he started. It was, we called it the simulcast shift. So it was, you were on Creme FM, which was a big deal at the time. That was a big radio station. You were on Creme FM from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. So you had 1 hour on Creme FM, which was, you're in the middle. It was a Saturday night, Sunday morning. So early Sunday morning, you're on Creme FM for 1 hour.
Wow.
And you really get only a couple times to talk. And it was, you're playing, classic rock kind of stuff. And then from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you're running all of back then you had to have a certain number of public service programs. And they were all sent over either on record or reel-to-reel tape, like program. This is all before, CDs and all digital stuff. So your job was to make sure all those programs played while you're simulcasting. So both the AM and the FM station are playing the same things. Mm-hmm. But you're, okay, here's the news program. There was then they would have some religious stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And then in between those is when you had your time. You'd have a minute or 45 seconds or a minute and a half, whatever it was. And you would do the weather, and then you would, say what the shows that were coming up were, all that kind of stuff. So you get through the night doing that. And then from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., they had their talk show. And they would have a host, and, they would usually have guests or two guests. And then my job was to answer the phone, screen the calls, mm-hmm. if they had calls. If they didn't have calls, which happened a lot, then you're just running the control board for them. So I did that for a while. Then, had the overnight shift, the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift. And then you I hit kind of a wall there where I was doing the overnight shift. I was managing apartments, and then I was also a club DJ.
Wow!
Back at the old Kavanaugh's Inn at the park, and the old school, like 2 discs, and you're beat mixing into some. So I that was fun, and then took a job in Texas. It was actually Ken, he was in Texas first, and he got hired from away from a station to program a station. He said, "Hey, why don't you come down here and you can be the morning news guy."
Wow.
And
what year was this?
This was in 84. 85.
Okay.
Yeah. 80. I was there. I was, Creme FM. I was on Creme FM. Then it turned into the Zoo.
Okay.
So I was there for about a year. That first year of the Zoo was pretty.
So Creme FM was 92.9?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And it flipped to the Zoo, and then I thought, well, this is what I really like to do, And I liked the classic rock music, but pop music was kind of the fun thing, and that was the first real, FM top 40,
right?
In the market. So huge ratings and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing that for about a year. Then I went over to Rock 106, which was up on the South Hill. Did that for about a year, and then that's when I got the call from Ken, and he said, "Why don't you, come here and you can, do the news and sports." They had in Texas, every station was tied to a high school football team. Football is just the biggest thing ever in Texas.
Right.
It's like FM pop stations on Friday nights just quit playing music, and it was live football.
Their team.
Yeah, the local team. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was doing, the first year I was the commentator. I was the second guy for the Killeen football high school team, Killeen Kangaroos. That was their name.
Funny.
And then the next year I was the play-by-play guy. And that second year they ended up going to the state playoffs in Texas. So we're traveling all over the state calling games. I called a game at Bryan College Station where Texas A&M was 80,000 seat stadium.
Wow.
They only had maybe 15,000 for the game.
Right.
But I got to broadcast from that booth, and it was like, this is the coolest thing
Sweet.
ever. So I loved doing all that. And during that time, when I was doing news for both the AM and the FM, the AM guy would, he'd bounce things off of me, and I kind of liked playing around and being a little more, creative, and then also having a bit more fun than just reading the news and the sports and the weather and all that. So then I got the call to come back to the Zoo, and that was in 87.
And where in Texas was that?
I lived in Temple. The station was in Belton, but it was Killeen, Temple. It's central. It's right between Waco and Austin.
Oh, okay.
So it's just right. I think they called it the Centralplex or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Dallas area was the Metroplex, and so we were kind of in the middle of the state, and it was it was an owner run station. So the guy that owned the station was the GM, and he was in there every day, and so
kind of cool.
It was super cool, and he was a really good guy, and loved radio. But this was probably his third or fourth radio station that he would buy a crappy radio station and then build it up.
Wow.
And then sell it and make a lot of money and then start all over again. He loved it, and he was a good owner, smart owner, loved promotions. We gave away cars. This is, a little, fairly small market in Texas. We gave away cars. We gave away $10,000 in cash. We gave away a house. They had these, pre-built houses, but we literally gave away a house. So that was really fun.
Cool.
Learned a lot and had a great time, and then got the call to come back to Spokane, and then that was the first of the kind of the Breakfast Boys thing. Worked with Jim Arnold.
Nice.
And he was the guy, and his first partner had left, went to LA, and so he said, "Hey, why don't you do this?" And I knew the general manager at the time was a friend of mine, and so she had me come, and I interviewed and got that job, and then that's when I was like, okay, well, now I'm doing true entertainment radio. Like we're just we're doing bits, we're doing it's all fun.
And that was a full-blown morning show.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep.
Like
It was
5 to 10 or whatever.
Yep, and it was huge numbers. No one will ever, just by the way the business is,
Right.
no one can ever do that. I mean,
It was like the heyday.
We had 18 to 34. We'd have like a 72 share. I mean, it was insane. I still have some of those old rating books too. So like, oh, I want to hang on to this.
Yeah.
So that was super fun, and then the general manager that hired me in Spokane hired Ken, and so they were both in Colorado Springs, and so they hired me to come to Colorado Springs to start a morning show there. They just it was a new owner. Actually, it was a group of owners. It was a bunch of doctors that got together, and they were trying to diversify their money. They grossly overspent to buy radio at that time. I think they spent like $8 million on a standalone FM station.
Wow.
But it was that I've always told people, and Ken and I have talked about it, where we were only there for about a year, but that was the most living I had done in a year. I mean, every day we were doing something crazy and fun, and how do we get more attention. I mean, just everything that you think of, you didn't process it, you just did it, and then
Really?
you saw what worked and what didn't, and then you just I had a blast. That was super fun. And then that station actually went under.
No way.
And that was my first beginning of learning the business, because I was so excited. I was like, oh, this morning we only have 5 commercials in the 7 o'clock hour. This is great. I never thought that, oh, well,
We need
we're
more.
probably screwed here. So the station kind of went under, and the old person that owned it took it over. And this was the Friday before Christmas, 1989. It was December 22nd. It was a Friday, and we all lost our jobs. And I remember, this is before cell phones or anything like that. And I remember calling our consultant, and I had I was had 6-month-old at home, and no savings. I'm just a crazy person.
Yeah.
And I remember calling him and said, I need a job. This whole thing blew up, and I have no savings. I got to do this. And he says, well, I can get you a job. You'll be working, right after the first of the year. He said it may be Mississippi or North Dakota, but I can get you, I can get you something. And I said, well, how about North Dakota? And so he made a call. I think I interviewed it might have been before the first of the year. And they hired me. My first day on the air in North Dakota was January 10th.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And where in North Dakota?
Minot, North Dakota.
Dude.
Well, yes, it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I had never, obviously never been to North, didn't know anything. I will say the company was fantastic. They paid for my move. They knew, that I didn't have any money or anything.
Yeah.
And so they took care of everything. It was Meyer Broadcasting, which in the Midwest at that time they were a big name, super good people. So they hired me, and
Here, question for you. Because you were at Breakfast Boys, right?
yeah.
And you were saying it was huge. What catalyzed you to think, I'm going to go to Colorado and fire this thing up with Ken, when you had such a good thing going then? Was it a sense of adventure?
A little bit of that, but more that, well, I want to be the guy,
Like what Jim Arnold was
Jim
for your
was
guys'
Jim
show?
was the guy. He was the lead. It was,
And you were
it
more
was
of a
Jim and
sidekick?
Dave.
Okay.
And, Jim and Dave, Breakfast Boys, and he made the decisions, and all that. And it was just that's a good way to describe it. I could have stayed, and it would have been great, but the adventure, like, and when you're starting out in radio, you think that, well, you have to keep moving. You got to keep moving up. You got to keep
Right.
doing all that.
Right.
And so that was the whole thing. Well, this is a move up. Colorado Springs was about the same size as Spokane. It was, and now I think it might even be bigger, but.
And you got to be the lead dog.
And I was and working with Ken and our general manager Barb. It was kind of like they trusted me, and it was like, okay, let's. And I worked like crazy, man. I would be at the radio station literally all day. Get there at 4 and leave at 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
That just consumed me. I loved it. So we had a great time. It just. Just kind of...
The station didn't work, but you worked. You enjoyed it.
Yeah, I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. And then the North Dakota thing came up, and that was sort of the beginning of the business of this. It's like, okay, well, I don't want that to happen to me again. Like,
right.
How do we make sure that the company is happy and they're making money? And, so I was... I was doing remotes, and in North Dakota, Minot, North Dakota, there'd be times when it's the middle of January, and they want you to be at something, a
right. video
store or something back then. And there'd be times when you'd go there and like literally nobody would come. But they paid for you to be there and all that kind of
so
stuff.
You just gotta.
So I did all that, learned a lot. I was doing a lot of bits at that was a time. I started in Colorado, but a lot of it when I was in North Dakota, I was doing different voices for the American Comedy Network. So I was doing a Keith Jackson, Paul Harvey, and Tom Brokaw. Those were my things, and they would send me a script, and I would. Back then, I'd put it on a reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
And then I'd FedEx the tape to it was Bridgeport, Connecticut, where the American Comedy was, and then I'd get money for that. So I was,
That's fun.
I was doing okay, but I knew I never wanted to stay in North Dakota very long, and
right.
so I was always, looking around for another job. And
did you have a fire in you, like, man? Because I know my dad was in radio. I'm not sure if you knew that.
Yes.
And he's got a ton of friends who were at Creme probably just before you got there in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys, their goal was to get to Seattle and then get to LA.
Yep.
Or get to New York if they were okay with the East Coast. And was that ever a thing in your mind to try to get to that level, or did it shift in North Dakota to where you were like, I just want to be somewhere where I know it's going to work really well?
I was still in the mindset of keep going bigger, but when you're in North Dakota, you go.
It's all bigger.
Anywhere is better. But I had, and I think I still have it used to, a Radio and Records was a publication that came out weekly. It was we called it the R&R, and it was like everybody wanted to dissect that thing, read the whole thing. It had all the music charts on it and all the stuff that was happening in the business. And I went from North Dakota to New York, and it was a network that was building, and so they had thousands of people had sent in tapes, and I got the call back and chatted with them on the phone. They flew me out, and this is back in the day when if you had another job, you didn't tell your current employer that, I've been looking, or I have people that are interested. So everything was done in secret. I got off the air Friday morning. I think my flight out was like at noon. Went from Minot to Minneapolis, and then Minneapolis into Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And that's where the radio network was. So I get there, and I am spent. I am so tired, but the nicest guys in the world. I love those people. They hired me in New York, and
wow.
so that was that's the first time I was like, oh, geez, this is pretty decent money, and I was very, very happy about that. The thing that I didn't realize is that how expensive it was to live there. I mean, I was basing everything on North Dakota, money, and
Right.
so I take this deal, and it was a great deal, but I get there, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's, I can't buy a house, but it's, I can have it was a townhouse, and, rented that. My first electricity bill, so I think I started in November, and I think my first electricity bill for 1 month was like $1,200.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so
And this is what, 1990 or
this was
something?
1990. Yeah. Yeah. And so that was like, oh, geez, everything costs more. Car insurance, and, it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was a different, I learned a lot. And the guy that owned the network, super great guy, Tom Golisano, he was the guy that owned Paychex Company. They would literally do paychecks for all of these businesses across the country.
Oh,
so
wow.
probably a multi-billion-dollar. He actually ran for governor of New York. Got like 10% of the vote. He was an independent.
Oh, wow.
And he was there. I mean, he was in the building, in the network, and he was a wonderful guy. I loved the network. That was, I got to, everybody at the network came from somewhere else. Like it was a true melting pot. Like I was from North Dakota. There was a woman from North Carolina. There was two different guys from California, guy from Texas. I mean, it was all, they had hired different people all over the country. And then, they had a ton of money. So we would do these, I don't know what you call them. Every week they would have me in a different location in the Northeast, did different affiliates and stuff. So we had a driver, we had like a manager type person.
Wow.
Then I had a producer, and then I had me, and so we're going to all these fun places with money to spend, and staying in really, really nice hotels, and it's like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoyed that. And then I was there for about a year, a little over a year. And then I was getting the calls from Spokane to come back. And the first deal, I couldn't make it work. It's just like, and then finally they made a deal that's like, okay, I think I can do this. But I had, living on the East Coast, it was, I remember flying home for Christmas, and it was like $3,500 or something. And I was like, I don't really have any,
Right.
I don't have any family or anything over here. So I was always thinking, I want to get back. I didn't know that I'd be going back to Spokane. I thought I would be
Just
somewhere
west.
else in the Northwest. So I ended up taking that job, and that was in July of '92. And that's where I've been. Prior to that, I had never been anywhere more than 2 years. Like every 2 years, I was moving somewhere.
Yeah.
Until coming back here in '92, and then that was, they hired me, and then they said, well, we want you to work with this with the other guy, and it was Skippy Dumpster. Tino was his real name.
Okay.
He was a great guy, musician. I mean, I think he taught music, and super nice guy, but he wasn't a radio guy.
Yeah.
And that didn't last for very long. And then,
Doing a morning bit.
yeah,
Morning show.
it was me and him. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was less than a month. And then Ken Hopkins was the program director of the station.
Right.
And he said, well, we need to find somebody else. I'll fill in until we can get somebody else. And
All the way to the end.
yeah, that was it.
And so does that, so while you were gone, the Breakfast Boys, as we would have known it in 88 or 89, whenever that was, that ended. Jim Arnold left?
Jim left about 6 months after I left.
Oh, okay.
He went to San Diego, and then they put on another show on the station, but they were not. They wanted to do their own thing. I don't even remember what they called themselves. It was fairly short lived.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. There was 3 of them, and
Interesting.
Mark Patrick was one of them, and he ended up taking a job at KHQ doing sports. Kind of left radio to do that, and then when I came back, it was like, well, and I remember I actually asked Jim, because Jim had already left KZZU, went to San Diego, and then he was already back in Spokane by the time I came back.
Okay.
And I remember talking to him. He was at a different radio station, and I just said, hey, are you okay if, I use the Breakfast Boys thing? And he said, oh, yeah, sure, go for it,
Oh, cool.
So I don't know, there was no legal reason or anything to do that, but I just, wanted to have his
relational
blessing. And so he was cool with that. And then it was, Dave and Ken, Breakfast Boys, and that went all the way into the late 90s, and then it was Breakfast Boys and Molly. Mm-hmm. Molly started in late 98. She was actually just helping us with Christmas Wish back then. And then she just kind of, kept being a part of the show. And then, so it was Breakfast Boys and Molly until 2003. And then she went to the Star, which was
I remember
another station in the group. And then in 2005, we all came back together on the KZZU, and that was a really good run from the time we were there till the time we all got fired.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm always, talking to other radio friends, when you're doing it and you don't really process that, gosh, this is pretty good. This is a pretty good run. But I would hear from other friends, and all of them in bigger markets. They were all, everybody was very, very good to me. They were, very nice and helpful for the little guys in Spokane.
Yeah.
But they were always like, you guys, you got a good thing going here. And it was great. It was great until it wasn't. And then, then it all exploded. But
it's wild because you didn't see it coming.
No.
Right?
And there was no reason to see it coming.
Right.
You could.
How could you?
Yeah. It's like, our world was, just keep, getting numbers, building. We had I don't know if it was the last book or the second to the last rating book. We were still winning in the 18 to 34 demographic. And I always would look at those younger demos because I thought, as long as we are building the audience, I mean, we were, at that time, we were all, in our 50s, 60s for Ken, and I was getting there. But I always thought, if we're still, we still have young people that are finding us, and we're competing against, at that time, I think there were 4 or 5 other stations that were hyper targeting 1834s.
Right.
And we were winning that. I just thought, well, we're doing it. This is good. This is all they could want.
Yeah.
So that was, it was there was, I'm sure, factors that we'll, never be able to talk about, why
Sure.
it all happened, but that was I don't think anyone can understand that move, but
no, it'll probably baffle everybody and be somewhat of a mystery.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then I don't know if Molly's, you probably know from Molly's side, but we were like, okay, now what do we do?
Right.
And
when was this? What year? Was it 23 or 24?
This was last year. It was June 20th of 24 was when we were all fired.
God, it seems like it was longer ago.
Yeah.
Just because how things work.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that too. I was like, geez, but it was really, it's less than a year ago.
Yeah.
And
And they just walked in and fired you guys.
One by one, yeah. First it was first Ken, then me, then Molly, and I've told the story now. It's like we were all like kind of like, well, what could this possibly be? I actually thought it had something to do with rating bonuses. I thought, okay, they're gonna wipe out our rating bonuses because they're, the company's not doing well or whatever they were going to say. So that's kind of what I had in my head that was going to happen. So I come out, and the meetings are 15 minutes apart. So that was a clue. Like, okay, well, they're not meeting with us. They're telling us something. It's like there is no the way they're structuring the meetings. So I'm going into the meeting as Ken is coming out, and I'm joking around with him. I said, well, I hope it went well. We'll see how it goes, and I could just tell on the look on his face was like it was really bad or something worse than I thought. But it could have been, so-and-so's health is an issue, or we had no idea.
Sure, it's out of the blue.
And then the whole conversation is less than 10 minutes, and they just said, yeah, you're all done. And then I texted Molly and just said, we're actually all being fired. That's what's happening. And then so she had a little bit of a heads up.
Yeah.
But not more than a minute or two. It was crazy.
It's so bizarre to me.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows why people do what they do. I was thinking back, there's a story when the Three Stooges worked for Columbia Pictures for 23 years. They put out, or I might be getting the number wrong, but it was a lot. It was 20 some odd years. And their contract came up and they were locked out of the studio and couldn't even come in and get their stuff. And
my gosh.
And nobody said thank you. They didn't have a party. It wasn't a celebration of, wow, what a great 20 some odd years we had. It was just...
Oh, I've never heard that story.
And I, for whatever reason, I think I was watching a documentary about them at the time this happened to you guys. And I thought, nothing changed. Like, like it's just, what an odd, impersonal way to deal with... I'm sorry, things are just personal after 20 years of professional work with people.
Well, yeah, and that's the, again, there's, a million ways to talk about it, but to have it be that long, I mean, for me, it was 32 years coming back.
Yeah.
Ken had always been in the building. He had always been at that station.
That's amazing.
And, and dealing with his, injury and all of that. And I know he sacrificed a lot to always, he was a great teammate and
very dedicated.
Very dedicated. That's the word. I mean, he was, and then to do that to all of us and specifically him, that's where it crosses into, you guys are not making a business decision. You're being bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no other way to, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, there had to be 100 better ways to deal with that. 1,000. I mean, almost all of them better than what they thought was great. And then I think in their minds, we are the company and we're the most important thing. And, it's our way or the highway kind of thing. But when you don't, value people that, and I know we all made personal sacrifices, and then there were opportunities for us to go to other places and do other things, but we were always like, we're Spokane homers, we like this area, and that's why we were always very connected to business people in the community, community leaders, other media people. And so when when the new thing started, we had some bigger companies that said, well, we're with you guys. And so they came over with us, and we've got,
That's
more
amazing.
coming on all the time. And, so we did it. I know we did it right. Just the, the phrase, you marry your market. And we decided that, like, we are going to be Spokane people, and to have it just kind of be, where it's, really just kind of a, kind of an FU thing to us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Well, and it rippled out into the community very
Yeah,
negatively.
yeah.
It didn't reflect well on KXLY
yeah.
as a company
or
their.
or should it?
No, it shouldn't.
It's just like, that's what I was, saying. We haven't made a big deal about it publicly, but what, who would want to do business with people that would do that to a
Right.
valued employee? I mean, they can't say we weren't valued. I mean, we were delivering numbers for them. We were, we generated a lot of good things for them. And if it wasn't working financially, if that's still the claim they want to make, it's like, well, wouldn't you at least tell us and just say, hey, this, we aren't generating the money that we used to, or we're not generating enough, or we're not whatever. How do we, how can we monetize other things to get this? Or simply say, it's June, in September, this thing's gonna end. How do you guys want to? I mean, again, there's 100 other ways to do it. I think they picked the worst one.
They did. I mean, they could have done the same thing you're doing right now with KHQ, and it would have been a home run.
Yeah.
For everybody involved, but they didn't have any vision.
No, it was
for that.
It was very hard to understand. And then I think there's some personality things in there where the egos kind of got the best of them. And but other than the real surprise of that, and then the summer of like, oh, what are we gonna do? It's working out pretty well now.
Well, I was very, very happy you found your feet as quickly as you guys did, and found clarity, because you didn't lose a lot of momentum, and you were able to reestablish your existence very quickly, remarkably so.
Yeah, that was the thing. I remember getting and this was, after everything happened, it was craziness. I mean, phone blows up, and
right.
It was really a couple days of like, I am completely overwhelmed, like, of what, what's coming at us. And then, then you think, what are you going to do? And during that time, one of my best friends is Stephanie Vigil, who's been in this market for forever, and she's in California, but she worked at KHQ for years and years and years, and she said, hey, call me as soon as you can, or call me ASAP, it's important. And so, shit, I better.
Yeah.
So I call, and she says, hey, my old general manager wants to talk to you. Is that okay if I give him your number? And I was in such a negative state at that time. And I just said, yes, you can. I said, but I don't, if they just want us to, talk a lot of dirt about the, KXLY, I'm not into that. And she said, no, it's about a job. And I said, what could they? And this is me not thinking, no vision at all. I was in a bad state, but I was thinking, in my head, I was processing it like, well, I know they do a Saturday morning news thing, and they're gonna want us to be like at a, the pancake feed at whatever, or the baseball park for whatever. And that's in my head. That's all. I was just so not thinking like it could be anything. And so we set up the meeting, and it was this had only been a couple of weeks, less than a couple weeks, and in that time Ken had decided that he was gonna be out, semi-retire. So it was up to Molly and I to figure out what we want to do. And we knew that we wanted to do something. We were working with a company that was going to build us an app, and we had all these different pieces, super nice people in the community that offered their legal services for business contracts, all this kind of stuff. It was really, really, there was a tremendous amount of kind people out there. And so we were meeting early in the morning with a software developer, and he was saying, okay, well, it's going to take me a couple weeks, but I can build this app, and then you guys can use these. We had another guy that was going to let us use his studios to get started. I mean, things were in motion. And then we leave that meeting, we go directly to KHQ, and we had, on the way there thinking, well, we'll of course we're going to listen to them, but I can't imagine they're going to have anything for us that's going to fit what we do. And then they start, and it was all the big people at KHQ. I mean, it was everybody, and we're in this big fancy conference room. I'm wearing sweats and a golf shirt, or I'm like, I didn't know what I was getting into. So we get in there, and within the first 10 minutes, they're describing their vision for this, and Molly and I kind of looked at each other and thought, well, this is it. They were at that time. I think I can talk about this, but when in the early part, they said, well, we can, we're going to build you guys these studios, and then you'll do the show. It'll be a live stream, and then we'll have this podcast. I mean, they had thought all this through. We were like, why didn't we think of this? And they said, well, we want to be able to promote it during the Olympics. And then you would go on and be like mid-August, and we're, oh God, this is, I mean, we didn't tip our hand, but we knew it was a yes. But we said, okay, well, let us talk about it and all that kind of stuff. And then so we knew we were doing that deal, and then there was just some logistical things that we had to get through. There was other things they had to have in the studio, and so it took a little bit longer than we thought, but we definitely made the right choice. They've been so great.
That's wonderful.
And it's a really it's a first class operation. Everything. Everybody's happy, and it's a good spirit, and we're having fun. I mean, it's fun for us. It's new, and I think we were talking before we came into the studio here about, the days are a little bit longer now. It'll be very rare that I get out of there before 11 or 11:15. Some days it's close to noon. But in the big world of things, that's okay, because we're building, we're growing.
It's a new adventure,
and it is, and I'm learning new things, and I was talking to a radio friend the other day about it, and almost therapeutic, and I just said, there's a lot of this stuff that I'm just not good at, and she said, well, you don't know that you're not good at it yet. You just haven't done it. You may. 3 months down the road, you may say, I love doing this and I'm really good at it. And that was like that really clicked. It's like, yeah, that's true. We're thrown in a whole new world, for Molly and myself, talking to people and saying, well, we would like you to spend money on our show. In the early days, when we first started, it was, we had the core group that came over that really, they were going to do it just because they liked us and, believed in us. Well, now it's a situation where they can look at real numbers and go, oh my gosh, it's working. This is a great investment, or we're glad that we started when we did, and and we've grandfathered in some of these people that they're getting a tremendous deal. But now it's like the numbers truly do dictate like a good revenue stream. So,
Yeah.
and that's just because we have incredibly loyal listeners that they were sad when we were gone, and they were confused. They're like, well, confused, like, why would that happen?
Right.
And then the second confusion, well
Where
where
do we
are
go?
they?
Yeah.
How do we find them? And so we're just now kind of getting that to where people are finding us. And the other cool thing about this, as opposed to traditional radio, is the actual, you have real data. You have real
Hard numbers
that say this is how many people are listening at a specific time. We know exactly how many are listening at that time. And then the podcast element, when those hours start kicking in after, it's like, oh my gosh, this, and I was telling you off the air that, every week and every month we're still going up.
Yeah.
So and the beginning numbers were pretty decent too, so
Yeah.
it's really nice to see that people are, still finding us, new people that, oh, there they are, or whatever, or they're finding the show, and then B, spending way more time with us than we ever thought imaginable, you know, with traditional radio. And then, with radio too, is like, they can say, well, this is the number one show, here's the ratings. Well, those ratings are, they're based on about 1,400 people per quarter. That includes every single demographic, and it was from 3 months ago.
Right.
That's how, and you can, and we lived through those numbers. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say they're wrong, because it benefited us greatly over the years. But this new way, it's like, well, this is, here's yesterday, this, and then if you can come in the studio while we're, doing your commercial, and we can click on the thing and it'll show you, like, and not only, the numbers, but also where they are, in the whole world. We were, the first week, I think, we went through, and we had people in, there were Russia and different countries, Italy and France, and even this morning, there were 12 people that were listening in Canada. It's like, well, I want to know their story. Like,
yes,
are they from here, then moved there, or like what? Like, how is? But it is a real, they were there. Their little flag pops up.
That's so cool.
So I do, I'm always been like a numbers guy. So I can deep dive into that stuff, and I can go down a rabbit hole. I can spend literally, one night I did when I first started playing around, and then you learn about all the different ways you can find all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I spent 2.5, 3 hours, and it was finally like 11:30 at night. It's like, okay, I gotta stop this, and just focus on just doing, the fun show.
Yeah.
And then, every once in a while, kind of check, make sure we're still on that good, angle going up.
Yeah.
But it is fun, and I think it is the new way that this business is.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and it's your business now.
Right.
I mean, you're in a partnership with KHQ,
right.
but you're your own thing.
Right.
And that's kind of the new dynamic that you guys get to have fun with. And probably it's a little stretching, like you said.
Yeah, and I think that's, it is. I believe that will get easier. It should.
Absolutely.
The more you do it, you're going to find more efficient ways to do it. But I don't dread any of it. Like, it's, I know that, okay, I'm not going to get out of here until, after 11 o'clock, but I don't look at it like, oh, I'm stuck here doing this. It's more like, well, we got, the show's over. Now I gotta cut it up, edit it, and then, run it through another computer thing. And then it goes up onto the, for a podcast for people to, and that's the other cool thing. That was super cool. The first time that I, because we had a producer guy that KHQ had loaned to us for our first 6 months. Fantastic guy. He was doing all of that in the early stages, and so now we're transitioning. He's got to go back to his real job, and so now it's just Molly and I. But the first time that I put that up, and then to see all the, bing, 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 like the people that are downloading it, like they were waiting for it to be available, and then have that go. Yeah,
cool.
And then it is. It actually is really cool. It's like every one of those little dings is a person that has chosen you. Like they've chosen our show to, like, oh, it's available now. Good, I'm gonna get it right now. And I don't know who they are. I don't know their backstory, but that's so exciting to see. To see that, and in this new world, it's much more of a commitment for them. Old school radio, it's like, well, I got in my car and the station was on, and so I heard them. This is, I'm going to the app, because I want to hear them right now, and they click on it, and they're finding us, and then if it's noon and they're thinking, I want the show, it's available
right there.
I'm going to it right now,
and it's in their earbuds or whatever.
And I hear so many people that, in the old days would only hear 20 to 30 minutes of the show driving into work, and then got to work, and then left work, and that was it. Well, now they're still doing that. They're still listening to us on the way to work, but then they know when they're off work, and they're home, they're doing stuff around the house, walking the dog or whatever. They're consuming the show, and that's the number. I admit to being naive to not knowing how powerful that was going to be. I didn't. I was an old school radio person. Yeah, it's fantastic. But I was kind of an idiot. I didn't see that. Yeah. And so that's super cool.
That's amazing.
That's really exciting. And the fact that it's real.
Yeah.
Real people, and not someone saying, well, we think there were this many people listening,
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And the thing I hear most in all of your stories that kind of stands out to me is how many good people you've enjoyed working with and knowing in your career's trajectory and the journey, the adventure you've gone on. Yes, I'm sure there's some bad apples in there and things, and a couple negative, and most recently a very negative experience. But by and large, whether it was Dakota or Rochester, New York, or all these different places you went to, it's just, worked for this guy. He was amazing. Had this general manager. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool thing. How do you feel looking back on that at this point? And obviously you work with Molly, who you love, and you got to work with Ken for so long.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of, it sounds like, from my point of view, a lot of really excellent relationships and interactions and things with fine people.
Yeah, I know that in the big world of any kind of work, business, industry, you can be lucky or unlucky on who's in your path or with you on your path or whatever. And I think I'm very, very lucky. Very.
That's cool.
I had people that were tremendous teammates before I even understood that part of radio, as clunky as that sounds, but you look back and think, well, they had a better idea of the big picture than I did. And then and I've learned, and you grow, and you through different situations, you get better at those. But yeah, there's been a lot of really smart people. Some people that weren't very smart, but they were super good, honest, kind people. And so I've always said that it's like I can work for an idiot or a jerk, just as long as they're not both. And because then you got a mess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's been some real, tough, hard jerks. You could call them an even worse name, but they would be like, you would say, well, they know what they're doing. And this is how we got to do it, whatever.
Right.
And the opposite side of that is, gosh, this person is, I love them, but we know that this is probably not the right idea, but we're gonna do what we're supposed to do because this is a good person. And so I know that I have had both of those in my life, and many that were, good people and also very smart. And some of those are, out of market, people, but you stay connected to them because you like talking to them and take advice from lots of different people. But the percentage of people that were not very smart and a bad person, I had very few of those.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
it's encouraging.
And then in any business, I think, people working on an assembly line, and they may have the same issue. Like, oh, that person's a real jerk. But we know at least what we're supposed to do and get this job done and then move on.
Right.
Or, this person's a disaster, but we sure love him, and we're going to help him. We're going to work together and make it all good. So I think everybody has some of that, and when you do anything for 4 decades, you're bound to have those
see a lot.
situations. Yeah. So, it's been a good, life is good today. Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I love your song. I love
man.
all your songs. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Those are my favorite on our show when we can play your music.
Yeah, I love that you. I'm honored that you guys play my music. It's really fun for me. So, well, dude, we covered some territory, my friend.
Yeah. I have no idea what time it is. I don't know how long we've been talking.
We've rocked over an hour.
Oh, geez.
It's been glorious.
Okay.
So
it has been fun.
Dave, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And when it comes Seahawk time, maybe even around the draft, or after the draft, we could even bounce it. It's my show. I can mix it all up.
Yeah,
I got some Seahawk times. I got other times. But we will have to go down that road. But, dude, thank you. Very, very honored you came on.
It.
And love it. So.
It's fun to talk about old radio.
Yeah. Beautiful stories.
Yeah. Good times.